Hi, welcome to our tax year end planning video for the tax year end 2022. We're going to talk you through some of the allowances that you're entitled to, some of which if you don't use now, you'll lose them by the next tax year. So here on the video, we've got Scott and Sam, and obviously myself, Nick, and we're going to talk you through options available to you in the next few minutes. First and foremost, as I mentioned, some of these allowances are use them or lose them. So if you don't take advantage of them before the 5th of April, you won't be able to use that year's allowance. So it's quite important that if any of these options appeal to you, you take advantage of them as soon as you possibly can. And obviously Scott, Sam, myself, and indeed Martin, who didn't want to join us on this video, are available to help you with those decisions before the end of the tax year. There's a few key pillars available to you for tax planning. ISAs, Scott's going to talk to you about ISAs in a moment. Pension planning is obviously a hugely valuable tool, and some options that you may not have heard of. Venture capital trusts and EISs also offer tax incentives that can utilise this year's ISAs, this year's allowances for mainly income tax relief. So we're going to talk about ISAs now. So I'm going to hand you over to Scott, who's going to talk you through the importance of ISA planning.
Cheers, Nick. Yeah, so as we said, ISA, they're an individual savings account. The real benefit of this would be that it will provide you a tax efficient wrapper for your cash and your investments. Must be 18 or over and a UK resident for tax purposes to be able to get this investment. You have £20,000 per year, and that can be split between the different options of ISA. And this is one of the ones, as Nick said, it is a use it or lose it for this tax year. The real benefits of an ISA is that it's tax-free interest, so no further tax on income or capital gains. Neither do the income or the gains need to be declared on your tax return. If you've got a cash ISA that's not performing, this is something that can be easily transferred over to a stocks and shares ISA, and that's something we can chat to you about. And also, if you have any children with a mature child trust fund, this is something that can be transferred into an ISA for them as well. So if anyone wants to have a chat about that, feel free to get in touch with your advisor, and we'll go through it with you.
Cool, thanks, Scott. I think now we are going to talk a bit about pensions. Now, as this slide says, obviously saving a pension may be hard, and it's hard when you're working and you're earning money and you think, I don't want to put that away for retirement. But if you get to retirement and you haven't got a pension, believe me, it's going to be a lot harder. And as the next slide shows, the main reason for that is actually we're all living a lot longer. As you can see, back in the 80s, the life expectancy for males and females who were 65 was around 15 to 18 years. We're projecting that forward, the ONS has projected that forward, that by 2062, the average 65-year-old is going to live to around 90. So what that means is your pension could basically end up, your retirement, could end up being as long as your working life. So if you haven't got a good, healthy pension pot to help fund that, you're really going to struggle to enjoy the retirement that you want. So that being said, well, what can you do? How much can you pay into your pension? Well, unfortunately, there isn't always good news around everything. And as you can see, over the last 10 years, the amount you can pay in has drastically reduced. Back in 2010, 2011, you could pay up to over £250,000 each year into your pension. Now, due to tax cuts and the cost that was costing the HMRC in tax rebate, that's been reduced dramatically. And as you can see, in the current tax year, the maximum you can pay in is £40,000, and this can actually be further reduced if you're a high earner earning above a threshold or adjusting of around 200, 240. But again, that's something we can discuss with you. So this basically shows the importance of saving as early as you can, because you are limited to what you can pay in. You can't hammer in loads towards the end of your working life to make up time. So the earlier you start and the more of this allowance you use, the better position you're going to be in when you retire. So why are some of the reasons that you would invest in a pension? Well, they're brilliant vehicles for several different reasons. Firstly, you get tax relief on all of your eligible contributions. Essentially what that means is any money that you invest from your personal taxed income you get an initial boost from the government of tax relief, which essentially equates to a 25% return on any money that you invest. Whilst that money is also invested, it's growing tax-free, so you get tax-efficient growth within the pension. And when you get to retirement, you can take a quarter of that pot tax-free if you so wish. You don't have to do that in one go. You can drip out over time, which can be a more efficient way of doing it. Pensions can also be passed efficiently across to beneficiaries, and then it also provides them with different options of how they can access the money. And any money you hold in a pension is exempt from inheritance tax. So not only is it a great vehicle for you and your retirement, it's also a great vehicle for protecting your hard-earned money and being able to pass that on tax efficiently down to your children or whoever you want. So pensions are a vital part of your planning. It's one of the fundamental building blocks. And if there's anything in that you want to utilise before the end of this tax year, do let us know. We can help you and get your plan back on track. I'm going to pass over to Nick now, who's going to talk a bit about some of the other plans you can invest in and also some other reliefs that you may not have thought about.
Thanks, Sam. So we've obviously talked through ISAs and pensions, which really do make up the cornerstone of most sound tax planning. But Sam mentioned the reduction in the amount that you're allowed to put in your pension over the last few years, in particular for higher earners, down to as little as £4,000. Options available to you to still receive income tax relief without investing in pension are enterprise investment schemes and in particular venture capital trusts. You're investing in smaller and growth UK companies. So as a result, the government are prepared to give you an incentive because they're obviously hoping for those companies to grow, employ more people and pay more tax. And you can get 30% income tax relief for making an investment in a venture capital trust. You have to hold that investment for 5 years to retain that relief, but thereafter there's no tax on either the growth or dividends that come from that investment. So it can, over time, create a really tax efficient route for further income or capital that you're accessing later in life. Enterprise investment schemes offer the same incentives, but because rather than investing in a pooled investment like a VCT for example, with a VCT, but with an EIS, you're actually owning shares in the company. It's a little bit more difficult to manage the actual tax position. So for tax year end planning in particular, VCT is probably a better option to look at than enterprise investment schemes. Although enterprise investment schemes, if we are looking at inheritance tax planning, can offer an additional benefit for that. Well, we're coming to inheritance tax. One of the allowances that in particular on an annual basis you should potentially taking advantage of is your annual gift allowance. Now, most people know that you're allowed to give £3,000 away a year and there will never be a recourse for inheritance tax. It's a really valuable allowance to take advantage of if you've got an estate that would be subject to inheritance tax and you've got more money than you necessarily need. You can give away that £3,000. Therefore, obviously, a married couple can give away £6,000. And if you haven't done it for the previous tax year, you can go back 1 year to give away that allowance. So it's worth taking advantage of that. Now, some of the options that you might want to consider to make that gift is, for instance, children's or indeed grandchildren's pensions. Even a child who's not earning any income, any UK resident, in fact, up to the age of 75, even if they don't have an income, can put £3,600 gross into a pension a year and receive tax relief. That would mean that you would pay, or your parent or grandparent would pay £2,880, and the government would automatically round it up to £3,600. And what a great way of getting your kids or grandchildren off to a great start for their future pension planning, particularly as Sam mentioned, it's being squeezed the more you get into your working life. You might also want to take advantage of children's ISAs, as my screen fails to move on. Bear with me. Oh, excuse us. Let's try and get that back on track. There we go. You could also absolutely use that annual gifting allowance, make a gift into a junior ISA. So your kids or grandchildren also have an ISA allowance. It's up to £9,000, but you don't obviously have to put that full amount in it. and that becomes an ISA when they reach 18, so they can continue saving into that. Unlike a pension, they can obviously access it earlier, so it might be something really helpful for helping to fund university, or maybe for a deposit on a property. But anyway, taking advantage of that gifting allowance is really very valuable. Anyway, that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour about some of the key tax planning that you can be doing before the end of the tax year. As we've all mentioned, we're available here if you need to pick up the phone or drop us an email, any assistance that you might require. Please don't hesitate to do so. And we will be in touch anyway with you to make sure that we are taking advantage of those allowances before we lose them. So we're here to help. But in the meantime, please do get in touch. But thanks very much for listening, and take advantage of those allowances before it is too late. Goodbye.
Bye.